You are now listening to the Unscripted Ohio Podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Grove. For all the latest Buckeyes news, analysis, reaction, and the best Ohio State community on the entire internet, head over to buckeyegrove.com or follow us on Twitter at Ohio State Rivals. Without any further delay, it's time to get unscripted, broadcasting from Podcast Central, a place that is not his mother's basement.
Hey, Mom! We get some meatloaf!
We promise. Here's your host, Kyle Lamb.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
Hey, welcome back, everybody. What is up? Good Friday. It is the Unscripted Ohio Podcast. I am your captain, your chief, your navigator, your concierge, Kyle Lamb, the jack of all trades, master of none. We are sailing away here on this Unscripted Ohio journey. We are brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com. I have a smorgasbord of topics today: Ohio State football, Ohio State basketball. How's this for a tease? A former Buckeye has done something that hasn't been done in 15 years. I will explain that later on in the Buckeye Beat. We'll also talk a little bit of obligatory NCAA shenanigans. The University of Missouri has been placed on a one-year ban for football, baseball, and softball, which, by the way, I actually don't disagree with the ban. It is for a rogue tutor doing some papers for 12 different student athletes at the University of Missouri. That in itself is not necessarily the big deal, but this has opened up questions again about the University of North Carolina case. Why UNC did not get placed on probation for what is almost agreeably by everyone much worse allegations. So I'll get into that for a few minutes later on because I think this is interesting. So Justin Fields, I get this question so many times. When will we learn of his fate? I don't think there's a lot of concern in Buckeye Nation that Justin Fields won't get a waiver. And I can tell you, nothing has really changed in that regard. Ohio State has always been optimistic that he will get a waiver. There's not much reason to really lose any sleep over this. But, look, I know what you guys are thinking. I hear it a lot, and I get it. What if the NCAA does something? I mean, we're just, look, I sat here and teased this Missouri case and how they screwed this up and how they, let UNC off the hook. So, I'm not going to lie. There's always the possibility of the NCAA doing something stupid, something silly, but I don't think that that's going to happen. I know there are a lot of people, though, that want to ask, well, what if that worst case scenario, that, ultimate, doomsday arrives where Justin Fields is not eligible, and then Ohio State has Matthew Baldwin on the roster, who, has never taken a snap at Ohio State in a game, at least. He's practiced, but he's never taken a snap. And, they don't have anybody else after Baldwin right now. Tate Martell is gone. Dwayne Haskins is off to the NFL, which, by the way, I think, man, if he ends up at the New York Giants, like I think he will, that would be really interesting to see him the next several years with him at quarterback and Saquon Barkley at running back. Who knows? That could be a really good offense for the Giants. I think that's a perfect fit. I know a lot of mock drafts have Haskins going to the Jaguars. A few have him going to the Redskins. There are a number of teams that could wind up drafting him, but I think the Giants would be the optimal place. But look, so what do I know on Justin Fields? I don't know anything concrete. Now, I can tell you this. Remember, so if, in fact, the hearing has happened already, as I've had at least one person tell me they think it has already occurred. And, I know they're keeping this quiet because the process is kind of a procedural thing. It's not something where Ohio State goes to the process and, goes to the hearing and tries to talk the NCAA into something. They don't attend. Justin Fields would not attend. His attorney would not attend. His family would not attend. This hearing would only be attended by a caseworker within the NCAA that would be going to make the arguments on behalf of Fields and Ohio State before a committee of 10 people. And so Ohio State is not going to have any information at what occurs in this hearing other than the caseworker just saying, yeah, I think it went well, or I think it didn't go well. You know, that panelist number 7, you know, I thought he gave me a smile when I made this one remark, or panelist number 4, she seemed to be really happy when I was talking, although, maybe she really enjoyed the ice cream that she had before she came in the room. It's just, there's nothing tangible to go on here. It's really just, the caseworker is reading the faces of these panelists and really relaying to Ohio State, yeah, it went well or it did not go well. But the presumption here, because the University of Georgia has agreed with the facts of the case and the reasons for wanting to get the waiver granted, that helps a lot, because they're going along with this basically is going to give the panel a lot easier time saying, yeah, we agree with the facts of the case here. This is in the best interest of the, quote unquote, and I'm using the quotes, the air quotes here. You can't see this in the podcast, but I am using them, I promise. It's in the best interest of the student athlete. Okay, that's their buzzword, student athlete, not just athlete, not player, student athlete, and don't forget the hyphen. But they could say, yeah, this is in the best interest. The former school, University of Georgia, agrees with the facts. They support the waiver. There's really no reason to drag our feet on this. And believe me, that's not to say that the NCAA has to say yes. Okay, they could figure whatever reason they want. They can find a reason not to grant this waiver, but chances are they will grant it. Justin Fields, in my opinion, will be eligible this year. We should know something in the next few weeks, next month or two for sure, I think. Justin Fields will be Ohio State starting quarterback in 2019. It's real, and it will be spectacular. If you're a Seinfeld fan, real and spectacular. I promise everything should be hunky-dory this year with Justin Fields at quarterback for the Buckeyes. I mentioned Haskins a few minutes ago and him, possibly being drafted by the Giants, which I think would be really cool. I saw an interesting topic. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, really, because, I'm sure that we've talked about this so many times before. It's been beaten to death. It's been discussed on Twitter. If you check my timeline at KYLam8, I'm sure if you do an advanced search, you're going to find myself talking about this once or twice or more. But I saw the question, about, fans that were not, I forget where I saw this. It may have been J-Book, but wherever I saw it, I saw this question, somebody, some casual fans asking, why didn't Dwayne Haskins start for more than a year? And look, I'm just going to go here again. You know my thoughts on this. Some people swear he should have been the starting quarterback in 2017. I am not one of those people. And, look, this is just not my opinion. I mean, the coaching staff believes this with all their hearts. And Dwayne Haskins has said this publicly, by the way. He has said he was not ready to start in 2017. And it's not just because of JT Barrett. It's that he did not feel he was ready. The coaches did not feel he was ready. The Dwayne Haskins you saw as a starting quarterback for Ohio State this year, that's not the quarterback you would have seen last year. And I saw people pointing to Michigan. Well, Michigan is proof that he was ready. No, Michigan was not proof. You got to remember, I mean, in that Michigan game, he looked great. But he looked great for all of 7 pass attempts. Okay, he was 6 of 7 for 94 yards. Now, give him all the credit in the world. He stepped up in a big game with a lot of pressure on the road against a quality opponent, and he did everything he needed to do in that game to help Ohio State come back and win the game. But it's really a stretch to suggest 7 pass attempts at the end of the year in a regular season game is proof that he would have been fine all season long, because that's just not the case. Remember, he was behind Joe Burrow on the depth chart early in that season before Burrow hurt his hand, okay? Back in, I think it was the first week of September in 2017 when Burrow hurt his hand. At that point, Dwayne Haskins was not even number 2 on the depth chart. He was number 3. He just was not ready. He stared down receivers, and that's not a guess. Okay, this somebody that would know has told me that. He stared down receivers. He wasn't going through progressions. He just wasn't ready to be the quarterback that we saw this year. Okay, and those 7 pass attempts, and like I said, give him all the credit in the world. He looked great. He came back and rescued that game for Ohio State. If JT Barrett doesn't get hurt and stays in that game, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe he would have come back and they still would have won the game. I don't know. But they did come back under Haskins. But it was 7 pass attempts, and remember after that one, the first one that everybody's jaw dropped because Haskins threw the ball, a dart through traffic. It got past a couple of Michigan defenders and into the arms of Austin Mack. After that pass, really, he didn't have to do a lot more. Once they got the go-ahead in that game, they got the lead, he just had to be a game manager the rest of the game. And they really were very conservative. So it's like, could it be played conservative all year long? Yeah, probably. But it wouldn't have always turned out that well. And he just would not have been ready to, make mistake-free football in other games in that season. So I think he started at the perfect time for Ohio State. I think it was his time this year. He made the most of it. And, I just think that some people are maybe, waxing poetic, revising history a little bit with that Michigan game because he was great in that game, but it really was a limited performance. It was 7 pass attempts. And, people have a tendency to do this, and I don't blame them. I think we all do it. I'm sure I've done it before. But, think about the Tate Martell game, the Rutgers game this year. I mean, where Martell went 10 of 10. People point to that game, but you got to remember in that game, he was 10 of 10 for 120 yards. But I looked this up this week, actually. It just, on another topic, I was looking at the highlights of that game. And out of those 10 passing attempts, 8 of them were 7 yards from line of scrimmage or fewer. Okay? Only 2 out of 10 passing attempts in that 10 of 10 game actually traveled in the air, at least past the line of scrimmage, more than 7 yards. There was a 12-yard, and then there was the 40 or 50-yarder to Ben Victor down the sidelines, or Terry McLaurin, I'm sorry. So, look, Tate Martell had a great game there, but when you really go back and look at it, I mean, the degree of difficulty on most of those passes was very low, and people just tend to pick out highlights of certain games, and they, they romanticize the performance, and I think that's what has happened with the Dwayne Haskins thing. So, look, spilled milk, we're crying over it, we're beating a horse to death. I understand, and I get why some of you wanted to see Dwayne Haskins last year. He was the most talented quarterback on the roster. I just don't think that it would have changed the results any. So I don't understand why we continually do this, why we say that Dwayne Haskins should have been starting. Everybody has a right to their opinions. It just, the coaching staff felt the way they did for a reason. Dwayne Haskins feels that way. I mean, he agrees with the coaching staff. He didn't think he was ready to start. And, speaking of horse analogies, why not, take it from the horse's mouth, right? So it's just interesting. But, sorry to bring that up. I just thought that was an interesting discussion. Figured I'd bring it up one more time. We got a lot to focus on in terms of looking ahead, though. Justin Fields, as I said, it will be real. It will be spectacular. It is coming to Ohio State in 2019. So do you know what else is coming in 2019? Help for the Ohio State basketball program. Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. Saturday afternoon, I should say, Ohio State went out to Lincoln, Nebraska. Actually, let me revise that one more time. Technically, it was Saturday morning because the tip time for that game in Lincoln was actually 11 a.m. Central. So technically Saturday morning, but Saturday afternoon, they wrapped up the win in Lincoln against Nebraska, a team that has been losing pretty much as Ohio State has. Indiana actually has been losing a lot more. I'll get to that in a second because there's an interesting tie there. But Ohio State got it done. They went on the road and beat a kind of desperate Nebraska team, although they didn't play very desperate. Ohio State did. Nebraska did not. Tuesday night, then, Ohio State went up and looked, I thought, really good for 20 minutes, and then actually for 25 minutes they looked respectable. They really, gave Michigan everything they could handle into the second half, and then the wheels just kind of fell off. Michigan started making shots. Ohio State missed shots. Ohio State did not play very well defensively down the stretch. Dwayne Washington, who has been battling the flu for a couple weeks now, really got taken advantage of on the defensive end, especially when Ohio State was trying to zone the Wolverines. And he has just not been the same since he's been sick. Hopefully they can get him healthy and back into playing shape, because his conditioning right now is really suffering, and that's part of the reason for the lower minutes played. But, this game, it just kind of fell apart. And I made the mistake of saying I kind of had a hunch earlier that day that Ohio State would win. And, for 25 minutes, I was still kind of actually feeling pretty optimistic about that hunch. But, again, the mistakes just kept piling on. Okay, you can almost live with the hot and cold shooting by Ohio State that they've had for the last several weeks. You can tolerate that, but you can't tolerate the turnovers. They had 19 turnovers on the road against Michigan. You can't do that against you can't do that against a lot of teams in the Big Ten this year because it's such a strong league, but you really can't do it on the road against a top 5 team. And help is coming. DJ Carton is going to be a great point guard. E.J. Liddell is a tremendous forward. Alonzo Gaffney, very, very talented. Help is coming. C.J. Walker, another point guard, the transfer from Florida State, will be eligible this year. They will have the weapons. Luther Muhammad and Dwayne Washington are going to step up as consistent offensive scorers before it is all said and done. Musa Jallow, Kyle Young, all these guys are going to be great assets for the Buckeyes going forward. But right now, they've got to get things together. And, I want to clarify something, too, on this game. I said Tuesday night, I made a joke. I said, because you probably noticed that Michigan was really, really cocky. Andre Wesson and Caleb Wesson's mother, Stephanie, posted on Twitter that she had a terrible experience up there in Ann Arbor, mostly because of the behavior of the student section, and that's really unfortunate. And I don't, maybe it was just a couple students, maybe it was a bunch. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know what kind of environment is going on up there in the Chrysler Center. But if it's anything like the Michigan players, then I can imagine it probably was not a pleasant experience. And I joked because you noticed how cocky they were. They were trash talking all game long, and I made it a joke. Just imagine if Michigan was actually as good as they are acting like. Imagine how good they would actually be if they were as good as they trash talked. And I got a lot of criticism on this comment. And look, there's no reason because, first of all, the context of the comment has nothing to do with whether Ohio State won or, Michigan being lucky because of refs or anything like that. Look, they beat Ohio State fair and square despite the officiating, which was poor again. Officials in this league have not figured out how to officiate Caleb Wesson fairly. But Ohio State did not really get the short end of the stick outside of how Caleb continues to be called. Ohio State lost. Plain and simple. Michigan was the better team. They're a 9-point favorite in this game, which means on a neutral floor, they're probably a 4 or 5. I would say probably about a 5-point favorite. And I know people are going to say, well, they lost by 18 or whatever it was. That's shocking. Michigan was clearly better. I don't think so. Michigan has won like 20 games in a row at home. I think on a neutral floor, Michigan is about a 5-point favorite. And I honestly think right now you have to kind of separate that Ohio State is in a funk. Michigan has been playing well all season long, but Ohio State's in a funk. I think if you play this game again on a neutral floor, I think it's surprisingly close. I think people would be shocked. There's not a big difference. Michigan is a better team. There's no denying that. Michigan is a good team. There's no denying that. But Ohio State is a comparable team that could give Michigan a run for their money. But so when I made this comment, though, about Michigan, look, they're a good team. I'm not trying to take any away. Obviously, they've only got one loss this year. That speaks for itself. But, this team acts like they're, UCLA 1967 or something, okay? They haven't won a title. They've been really good under John Beilein. And trust me, let me I want to make this clear. John Beeline is one of the best coaches in the country. I love everything about his program, except for this team is really just too cocky for me. They flop a lot. They showboat a lot. They're just not a very likable team when it comes to their antics. Now, on the floor, look, they play great defense. They're disciplined. They're smart with the basketball. They pass really well. They shoot well. They run their offense, their sets. They're a very good basketball team. Talent-wise, they're not as good as they act, and that's really all I'm trying to get at. They don't have a lot of first-round draft talent. They don't have lottery picks on their team, and credit them because they're winning without that kind of talent. But they're enviable as a basketball team. They're very unlikable as a group, and I just that's what I was trying to drive at. It was more a tongue-in-cheek joke, but I just think that as much as I respect John Beeline, the coach, and I respect that team and the way they run their system and their sets, look, they were very unlikable. Apparently the crowd was unlikable too. They were trash talking all game long, too much showboating, too much trash talking, too much flopping. I could just do without those things. But Ohio State basketball, though, look, they have got to start winning. They've got a stretch here where they've got potentially 4 wins in a row staring them in the face if they capitalize. They've got Rutgers on Saturday. That's a revenge game. And this is kind of scary from the standpoint that we've thought this about Penn State last year. Remember, they lost Penn State in the first game, and we're like, okay, well, they're going to get revenge on Penn State when Penn State comes back to Columbus, and that didn't happen. And then they also end up losing for a third time in the Big Ten tournament. And Rutgers right now has won 3 straight games in the Big Ten. That's the first time in 15 years that Rutgers has won 3 straight conference games. That includes the Big East going back till 2004. 2003-2004 season, that was the last time they have won 3 in a row. So Rutgers and Penn State at Indiana and Illinois, those next 4 games, that's a chance for Ohio State to get well. That game at Indiana, a month ago, we wouldn't have thought that was a potential get-well game, but Indiana has lost 7 in a row as they lost at Rutgers the other night. And now they have at Michigan State coming up and then home game against Iowa. They could be sitting at 9 in a row when Ohio State invades Assembly Hall on February 10th. So the Hoosiers are in big trouble right now, even more so than the Buckeyes. Nebraska's losing a lot, Ohio State losing. But this is Ohio State's chance. The schedule opens up a little bit. They have got to win these next 4. They've got to win Rutgers, Penn State, at Indiana. You got to get that win. Illinois. And that's when it gets really tough. At Michigan State and at Maryland, sandwiched in between a home game against Northwestern, home game against Iowa, road games at Purdue and Northwestern, and then they finish the season with a home game against Wisconsin on March 10th. So this is it for Ohio State. There are some landmine games coming up, and they have to win these next 4 so they can get some momentum going into that tough schedule the rest of the way. So real fast on this Missouri thing, I thought this was interesting. So I mentioned this in the show earlier. Missouri is getting a 1-year postseason ban for football as well as baseball and softball. And it's all has to do with a rogue actor, basically, a tutor at the institution that was working with football players and baseball and softball players. And basically, they did the work for 12 different athletes, okay? And Missouri found out about it. They reported to the NCAA. That tutor has been given a show cause, which, I've seen people reference a show cause. A show cause basically is not the NCAA saying you can't work anymore. I mean, it is, but it isn't. In practical terms, it is. But in reality, the technical description of a show cause just means that any institution that wants to hire a person that has a show cause, they have to literally show cause for why that institution should not also be put on probation and be punished from the NCAA in the same way that the institution that had previously hired that person was, being punished. So for this tutor getting a 10-year show cause, it just means for the next 10 years, if that tutor wants to work somewhere in the NCAA, that institution is going to have to show cause for why they should not be punished by the NCAA for hiring this individual. And really, all this is a show cause is a runaround to the fact that the NCAA can't say you can't hire this person. They're not able to do that because it would be legally they wouldn't get away with that. Because if you think about it, if you're this tutor, the NCAA can't tell you where you can and can't work. So this is just kind of a way around that. This is the NCAA's way of saying, yeah, we're going to make sure you don't work for one of our schools again. We can't ban you. We can't tell you can't work for them, but we will make sure that they have reason not to hire you. So that's what this is. But I have my personal opinion is I don't have an issue with Missouri being punished for this. But, what really is just irritating to, I think, everybody involved, if you read the description, the NCAA's case, the Committee on Infractions, when they came back with this, they explained, they actually put in the report why Missouri was being punished and why North Carolina, who, by the way, for 20 years had fake classes and, was cutting a break to athletes, and having easy A's and fake papers and all this stuff. And the NCAA's explanation for why North Carolina didn't get punished is because they basically said, well, our classes were available to the student population and not just athletes, so therefore it was not an extra benefit to athletes, and therefore we should not be punished by the NCAA. That was the explanation by the NCAA. So what that tells me here, and I suppose it tells many of you as well from your reaction, what's the point of being forthcoming with the NCAA? I mean, if you play by the rules, or at least if you, go through the process and you cooperate, you're just going to wind up getting in trouble. North Carolina, and the reason that they, in my opinion, did not get in trouble with the NCAA, it's not so much the NCAA didn't want to punish them. I kind of feel bad from a standpoint that a lot of these people working at the NCAA, the infractions officers, the people that do the investigations, it's not that they don't want to punish these people. They're not worried about the fact it's North Carolina. They're not going to let them off the hook because of that. I don't think it's good. It's a conspiracy. I don't think it's, we don't want North Carolina punished. I don't think it's anything like that. I think the enforcement staff at the NCAA wanted to punish North Carolina. The problem is North Carolina was threatening a lawsuit, and I think that they just didn't want to take the chance that if they punished North Carolina would turn around and say, we're taking you to court and we're going to drag this thing out because you have no authority over how we handle our academic affairs. And I think that's what it came down to. Is I think they were scared off by the UNC attorney, the legal team, and I think that's what happened. And it's kind of funny because North Carolina, on one hand, was basically saying, no, we didn't commit any fraud here. We opened this up. These classes were available to everybody. Nobody got an extra benefit. Then they turned around and basically told SACS, their accrediting body, that, we committed fraud here and we apologize, and they got put on probation for all that. And, it's just funny because on one hand, they were telling one thing, and on the other, they were telling another. So, look, that's what happened here. I think NCAA got scared off. It's unfortunate, but I think that is what happened. I don't think they were trying to cut the Tar Heels a break. I just think that they got scared off by the legal threats, and I think that's what it came down to. But it shows another unfortunate byproduct of the hypocrisy and the unevenness of the enforcement within the NCAA process. And so University of Missouri will be sitting out a bowl this upcoming year, whereas North Carolina was, of course, able to get off scotch-free for one of the worst cases of academic and athletic fraud I think anybody has ever seen. Unfortunate, but that is the way the cookie crumbles.
Stretch runtime here at Unscripted Ohio. Kick up your feet as we cross the finish line with the Buckeye Beat, the latest in Ohio State news and notes.
Kick the tires and light the fires, Big Daddy.
Before we wrap the show up today, time to pay off on a tease. I mentioned early in the show a former Buckeye had done something that has not been done in 15 years. Now, that sounds like a big statement right there, and I'm going to confess that it's something that a Buckeye has not done in 15 years. D'Angelo Russell, the 2018-2019 Brooklyn Nets guard, has been named to the NBA All-Star team, and it's well deserved. I mean, he's having a fantastic season. I'm going to talk about his improvement here in a second, but he really has elevated his game to another level. He's averaging almost 20 points a game. He's shooting 44% from the field, shooting 38% from three-point range. Both of those are career highs. He's got a career high 6.5 assists a game, up 1.3 assists from last year. He just all around, he's really changed the Nets. He's changed the culture there. They've gone from a bad team to a possible playoff team the way they're playing right now. They really are playing well, and he's a big reason why. And he's doing an amazing thing for the Nets. So the All-Star appearance is well deserved, but it's really interesting because an Ohio State player, a former Ohio State Buckeye, has not made an NBA All-Star team since 2004, and that was Michael Redd, okay? It has been 15 years since the last time a Buckeye made an All-Star team, which was really surprising to me because I was thinking Mike Conley had done it a few years back. But it turns out not only has Mike Conley not done it, but D'Angelo Russell, if my math is correct, and look, you guys, please, if you find an omission here and somebody I'm forgetting, please tweet at me at KYLAM8 because I don't want to be wrong on this. But from what I could tell, D'Angelo Russell is just the fourth Buckeye ever to make an NBA All-Star team. There was Jerry Lucas and John Havlicek, obvious, two Hall of Famers right there, and then Michael Redd and now D'Angelo Russell. I could not find any evidence that Jim Jackson ever made it. I couldn't find any evidence that Herb Williams or Clark Kellogg in his brief NBA career. I didn't see either one of those making it. I don't think Brad Sellers ever did because I think he just had a cup of coffee in the NBA. I was not able to find anybody else that had done this. So please, if you know of somebody that I have left out, please, by all means, tweet at me and let me know. But if my math and research is correct, I guess not so much math, but if my research is correct, then D'Angelo Russell is just the fourth Buckeye ever to make an NBA All-Star game. And that really surprises me because, yeah, I mean, look, when you think of NBA success, Ohio State has had, they've been really hit or miss, okay? There's been a lot of guys make the NBA, but they haven't had a lot of, outright success with individuals in the league. But still, you would think it'd be more than three guys prior to Russell, right? I mean, that's why I almost think I've got to be missing somebody. I mean, I went through the list of all the All-Stars, and maybe I missed somebody, but I specifically searched for some of the guys I could think of that might have made it, and I couldn't find anybody else. So really shocking there. I mean, Ohio State basketball, I know it's been a weird program from the standpoint, they've had a lot of highs, they've had a lot of lows, they've been a really inconsistent top 10 type of program, but, they've had, when you count the vacated seasons, they've had, 12 Final Four appearances? Only a handful of blue blood programs have had more than Ohio State. When Jeff Sagarin has, released his, back in, 10 years ago, released his all-time ratings, for every program ever, Ohio State was like number 8 in the country all time. So they've been a very, very good program, which is why, despite the lack of true NBA success, I was shocked to find out that Russell may have only been the fourth Buckeye ever to make an NBA All-Star game. He is definitely the first in 15 years to do it. But, like I said, the Russell has really elevated his game. He's becoming one of the better guards in the NBA. I mean, he's not an elite guy. He's not in that first level, all NBA team. He's not at that level yet, but he's getting really, really close. I mean, 20 points, almost 7 assists, and 4 rebounds a game for a point guard. That's getting it done. And he has really, he's making the Lakers look bad. I think that they've been a little more patient. Remember, Russell was only 22 years old. He came out when he was 19. He's only 22 years old now. He's got a really bright future ahead of him if he continues this development. So it wouldn't surprise me next year to see him in the 23, 24 point per game range for the Nets. But D'Angelo Russell is an NBA All-Star, first time in 15 years that has happened for a former Buckeye. So, Dar or deloading, whatever you want to call him, getting it done, repping the Buckeyes in the NBA for the Nets. That is going to wrap things up for us today. Remember that we will be back Monday with more Unscripted Ohio, and Corey and Johnny will be back on Wednesday with the Scarlet and Great podcast, and next Friday, of course, we'll be back as well on Unscripted Ohio. You could find us every Monday and Friday on BuckeyeGrove.com. You can catch Corey and Johnny's Scarlet and Great podcast every Wednesday. You can catch all of us on the medium of your choice in archives, either on SoundCloud, where we host, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Spotify. Just search for Unscripted Ohio. Make sure you follow us, rate and review us if you wouldn't mind, especially if you have nice thing to say. I hope you'll rate and review us anyway, but if you want to say nice things about us, I know I would appreciate it. You can catch me on Twitter at KYLam8. That is going to do it for today. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Remember, Ohio State basketball back at Value City Arena on Saturday at noon against Rutgers, and then they will have Penn State coming up next week. We will be back to recap Ohio State over the weekend, as well as talk more Ohio State football and football recruiting coming up next week. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great weekend. Back at you Monday.
You can get new episodes of Unscripted Ohio on Mondays and Fridays exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all things Ohio State.